So I'm Rachel. I'm one of the hand therapists at St Thomas's Hospital, and I work in the adult EB team. So I've been in the EB team for the past 8 years, and some of the challenges I've found with current practice have been wound management of the hand, trying to maintain web spaces, following people up and collecting evidence of what I'm doing, and splinting. I've been extremely fortunate to have been involved in the GLOVE project, so that's generation and evaluation of hand therapy devices for epidermolysis bullosa. It was an NIHR-funded project led by King's College London, involving participants from our adult service at St Thomas's and participants from Great Ormond Street Hospital. It's also involved engineers from Cardiff University. We've worked with Longhand Data in developing an online assessment tool, and we've also worked with Skinwear, who've developed the Skinny's web retention garments, and also with health economists from the University of Surrey. So as initially part of the project involved us having focus groups. So I certainly knew what I was finding really difficult with my clinical practice, but we also wanted to know, well, what were people who are using splints, using dressings on the hands, what were the problems they were having, and what did you feel could make things better? And so we then used all that information to develop the devices. So we know managing wounds on the hand is extremely difficult. We know it's a difficult area to get dressings to stay in place. We know that people are having to use patchwork dressings and then bandaging them in place. We know that when you've got dressings on your hand, it limits range of movement, it makes function more difficult. And we also know that people delay changing dressings on the hand because it is a difficult process. And we know that layers of dressings make the hand hot and sweaty and can make blistering worse. So the aim of the GLOVE project was further to work on findings from the web study and to develop 2 gloves. So the idea of this was to get away from the patchwork of dressings that are currently used. So we've developed a dressing glove, and quite a few of you have been to our stall to have a look at these today. So the glove is to get away from the layers. It's the idea is you have one layer on your hand. The dressing glove is made of viscose, and it has a silicone lining and an antimicrobial. A lot of the participants in the study were concerned, obviously, about putting a glove onto the hand and what the shearing forces would do to the hand, but most people have reported that they have actually been quite easy to put on. When removing the gloves, the idea is you soak your hand in water and the material actually slackens, which makes it easier to remove. The dressing gloves are disposable, so you wear one, you remove it, and then you go into a new glove. And some of the comments have been, well, does that make it more expensive? But I think we've seen that people at the moment are using lots of dressings on the hand. The other feedback we've had as well is that it's reduced the length of time to change dressings on the hand. So the other challenge we have is actually trying to keep the web spaces apart. So currently this is done again by using dressings or bandages. So again, we're using things not really as they're intended to be used. Some people opt to wear rings on the hand, and again, this can be difficult. So once you get a fixed flexion deformity on the finger, it's then very difficult to put rings on and off. I have ordered interim gloves for people, and these are gloves that are made by a company that makes garments for scar management. And we just use the lining material for these, so there's no pressure applied. But again, the material just isn't stretchy enough to get over fixed flexion deformities of the joints. And again, they just don't sit firmly in the web spaces. Other things, so the picture at the top is a neoprene sleeve that I fabricated in the hand therapy department. But again, the neoprene is only really of use for the first web space, and again, it's quite bulky. Other things we use are the putty splints, but again, they need to be bandaged in place and don't always stay on the hand securely. So we've developed what we call the reinforced web spacer glove. So working with the knitting company, they've reinforced the web spacers so that there's more pressure to put right down in the web spaces. These gloves are available in a Coolmax material, which is light and breathable, but also a viscose material, which gives a little bit more protection to the hand. They can be half-fingered and also full-fingered. If people choose to have them full-fingered, we can also add silver so people can continue to use touch-screen devices. And the idea is that the web spacer gloves can be used on top of the dressing glove. And these are machine washable. So another challenge, as I was saying, is actually collecting evidence to show that what we're doing is actually effective. This can be very difficult because we use goniometers to measure joint angle, and if people are wearing dressings, we're not going to get accurate measurements. The other thing is that fusing of the web spaces also make it difficult for us to tell which joints we're actually measuring. And unlike other areas in hand therapy where you'd follow people up quite regularly, we're not able to do that, and so it's very difficult to then collect data over time. And the outcome measures that we use currently in hand therapy aren't really specific enough for EB. So as part of the project, with our participants and research team, we've developed a hand therapy online assessment for EB. And we have what we call tele-indicators. So this measures hand function and observable clinical assessments, and it's on an ordinal scale. So 5 is your best case scenario and 0 is your worst case scenario. And the idea is that you do your scores with your hand therapist, and then you can actually complete the online assessment at home. So this is an example of one of the questions you'd be asked. So this is about the finger webbing. So webbing to the tip of the finger would be a 0, 5 would be no webbing, and webbing at the base of the finger is 4. Other questions it asks you are things like the number of blisters on your hand, skin condition, and then also questions about function, so if you're able to hold a can of drink. So what we did with the online system, before people started trialling the dressing glove in the study, they completed the online assessment. So we had data before people went into the dressing glove. And the other thing we were asking was people's experience of changing dressings and the length of time it was taking to change dressings. So further work that we need to do with Glove 1 is that we now need to test the online system in routine clinical practice. And we're delighted that DEBRA are going to fund us to continue to do this at St Thomas's for a year's project. The other thing we want to do is we need to get commercialisation for our dressing glove. So we have a long-term provision of bespoke versions for hand contractures. The other thing we've learned as well with our study is that people obviously need protection on the hand, and what we're reluctant to do is to add more bulk to the gloves, but we might need to look at how we can knit the glove more effectively just to provide more padding. The other thing as well is looking at the fluid intake of the glove and whether there's more work that we need to do around that. And the other thing we need to do is to continue to monitor the reinforced web spacer gloves and how effective those are. So as part of Glove 1, we also, what I mentioned, one of our challenges are the splints. So we know the thermoplastic splints that we fabricate need regular review and adjustment. And we know that when people live a distance from the specialist centres, it's very difficult to come in and have the splint adjusted. So we know if you have blisters on your fingers or you've been out of your splint during the day and you go into it at night, it can be extremely uncomfortable. We also know that the harsh plastic can damage the eyes and the skin. So we know that splints aren't always tolerated and people often stop wearing them, which then makes it difficult for us to maintain things. And as I said earlier, the putty splints are quite difficult to keep in place. So as part of Glove 1, we've been looking at developing an adjustable splint glove. So this is something that would be set up by your hand therapist, but if you had a day when you had a blister on your finger and you couldn't straighten your fingers out quite so much, you could reduce the tension yourself, and then once you thought you could go back to more extension, you can then make that adjustment, which means you wouldn't have to come into your specialist centre to have that done. Our engineers are also looking at trying to put a goniometer system within the glove so that we can remotely collect information. And this will all be linked to the online system. And this means that remotely we'll be able to pick up much more quickly if things are deteriorating or if we think that there are concerns with splints and things. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to our research team, and a particular thanks to all those participants who've been involved in the project and have given us so much of their time at both St Thomas's Adult Service and Great Ormond Street Service. And I'd just like to end with just a short film that just summarises the work of the Glove project.
The problem with epidermolysis bullosa is that the skin blisters, and we all heal by scar tissue. And on the hands, the scar tissue builds up between the fingers, causes them to fuse together, and the hand to contract and ultimately become non-functioning unless there are devices that are used regularly, daily, to stop this from happening.
What I've noticed, the dressing glove is actually keeping the moisture better in the hand, so it's less dry. When I take the gloves off, the skin is more healthy looking. It's not so dry and flaky, and it doesn't peel as much, if that makes sense.
The whole experience is much better now, so we do the dressing changes every other day, and it's just a 10-minute work, yes. Whereas before it was an experience for about 25 minutes per hand, now it's about 10 minutes per hand, yeah. So it's very easy for me, yeah.
So it's really important to know that what we're doing in terms of treatment is effective, and are our splints working? Are we maintaining results as much as we can in EB? Currently we can't do this because people have dressings, and because of the contractures it's quite hard to tell which joint you're actually measuring. And we have outcome measures in hand therapy, but they're not really specific enough for people with EB.
Yes, the clinicians say that they would like to be able to chart the whole trajectory of epidermolysis bullosa from birth. Taking advantage of digital technology, this is exactly what the hand therapy online system can do.